Graphing linear equations. Today we'll be graphing linear equations that are in slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, and when an equation is in slope-intercept form, the m represents the slope of the line, and b is our y-intercept. The y-intercept means where our line is going to cross the y-axis. You also need to know that slope is rise over run, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. This is an equation in slope-intercept form. In this equation, our m, which is our slope, is 3. Y equals mx plus b. So the number that is the coefficient of x, that's going to be our slope. And then our y-intercept is -2. Well, anytime we're graphing a line by using the slope and the y-intercept, the first part that we use is the y-intercept because that tells us where to start on the graph. The slope just tells us how slanted our line is, so it doesn't tell us where it is on the graph. Since our y-intercept is at -2, I'm going to put my first point at -2 on the y-axis. And then my slope is 3, which is the same as 3 over 1. And remember, I told you that slope is rise over run. So on my graph, from my y-intercept, I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then run 1 space. And that's where I put my next point. And I can do that as many times as I want to help me draw my graph. I can rise again 1, 2, 3, and run 1, and put my dot. And I could do it again, rise 3, run 1, and then just connect my dots. And always remember to put arrows at the ends of your lines. And that's how you draw a graph in slope-intercept form. Let's do another one. In this example, my slope, or my m, is -2. Again, I'm going to put it over 1 so that I can have a run. And then my y-intercept is 5. So the first place I'm going to go is on my y-axis up 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then my slope is a -2 over 1. Anytime we have a negative slope, choose one of the numbers to be negative. So I could either do -2 over +1, or I can do +2 over -1, but not -2 over -1, because a negative and a negative make a positive. So choose one of the numbers to be negative, but not both. So if on my graph I went -2 over +1, that means I would go down 2 because it's negative, and then to the right 1 because that's positive, and that would put my point right here. Or if I went +2, -1, that means I would go positive up 2, and -1 would mean to the left 1, and that would put my point right here. And as you see, those are still the same line. So it doesn't matter which one I choose to be negative, but make sure it's just one of them that's negative. If I had gone -2, -1, then that would have put me going down 2 spaces and to the left 1 space, and that would have made me go this direction, which is not correct. Another tip for knowing whether or not your graph is correct: if your slope is negative like this one, then it should be falling. Your line should be falling from left to right. So we had a -2 for our slope, and our line fell from left to right. In the graph that we did at first, we had a positive slope, and our line was rising from left to right. So always know, if your slope is positive, your line should be rising from left to right. If your slope is negative, your line should be falling from left to right. This equation is given to us in standard form. And standard form is ax plus by equals c. You need to know that. Standard form does not give us the information that we need to be able to graph it. So in order to graph an equation, we need to rearrange it and get it in slope-intercept form first. Another piece of information that you need to know about standard form is that it cannot contain fractions. So if you're told to write an equation in standard form to rearrange it and get it in standard form, then you will need to get rid of any fractions that are in the equation. Okay, so this equation, x plus 2y equals 8, is not in slope-intercept form, so let's get it into slope-intercept form so that we can graph it. Well, remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, so that means we need to get the y by itself. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and that leaves me with 2y equals negative x plus 8. And then I need to divide every term by 2. So that gives me y equals negative 1/2 x plus 4. My slope is a negative 1/2, and my y-intercept is 4. So I'm going to put my first dot at 4 on my y-axis. And then again, remember, this is a negative slope, so either negative 1 over positive 2 or positive 1 over negative 2. So if I went negative 1, positive 2, my point would be here, and positive 1, negative 2 would give me a point here. And I connect my dots, and like I said, if my slope is negative, my line should be falling, which it is. Here's another equation that's in standard form, so the first thing we need to do is get it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And I have negative y equals negative 4x plus 3. Well, the y is almost by itself, but it's negative, and I need my y to be positive. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 1. And that gives me y equals a positive 4x minus 3. So my slope is 4, and my y-intercept is negative 3. So my first dot on my graph is going to go at negative 3 on my y-axis. And then my slope, I'm going to change it to a fraction by putting it over 1. I'm going to rise 4 and run 1. Rise 4 and run 1. And then connect my points. And this was a positive slope, and my line is rising, so that helps me to know that I did it correctly. In this last example, it's not in slope-intercept form, and it's not in standard form because it contains fractions. So to get it into slope-intercept form, let's first get rid of the fractions. And remember, the way that we get rid of fractions, if it's in an equation, is we multiply every term by the least common denominator. Well, the least common denominator here is 6. So I'm going to multiply every term times 6. Even the term that's not a fraction. And when I do that, I have 6x divided by 2 plus 6y divided by 3 equals 6. And when I simplify, 6 divided by 2 is 3, so I get 3x plus 6 divided by 3 is 2. That's 2y equals 6. So now my fractions are gone. I need to get it in slope-intercept form, so I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I have 2y equals negative 3x plus 6, and then divide everything by 2. So that gives me y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 3. Okay, so my slope is a negative 3 over 2, and my y-intercept is positive 3. So my first dot goes up 3 on my y-axis, and then my slope is negative 3 over 2 or 3 over negative 2. So I would go down 3 into the right 2, or I could go up 3 into the left 2, and then connect my dots. Make sure you put arrows at the ends, and my line is falling, which it should be since my slope is negative.